Welcome everybody to another episode of the Institute of Virtual Lunch and Learn series. Very excited today to have a guest with us, Laurel Wilke of the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. Laurel, welcome to the show. So excited to learn what you guys have been doing in the virtual space.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. You guys have been dabbling in virtual before the pandemic. Is that accurate? Talk to us a little bit about what you guys have been doing, and let's learn, let's see what we can glean from your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been fortunate because we've worked with our sponsors like Nasdaq and Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini. So we've done a lot of broadcasting events with Nasdaq prior to the pandemic, and we were doing a lot of our Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center events in a hybrid format where we would live stream the events to Facebook. But the quality and what we can do at this point in the game is completely different than where we were at before the pandemic. So in April, we did our first event completely virtual in Zoom on the webinar platform. And we have been doing that ever since. We've done about 74 events now since April. So we are closing out the year strong and looking forward to all there is to come in 2021.
Wow, 74 events. You may have the crown for most virtual events produced of any of our guests so far on the show. 74 events means that you've had lots of learnings too. Let's start at the beginning. What was that first virtual? Obviously, you guys were doing the hybrids prior with the Facebook Live, you said, adjacent to your traditional events. What was that first virtual experience like when you went fully virtual in April?
Yeah, so our first virtual experience was really exciting. We did have only 48 hours to plan it, figure it out, get a tech check scheduled, go through all the motions. But we had an incredible opportunity to work with Deepak Chopra, and he wanted to come on with us, and we were able to launch his 21-day meditation challenge that he started back in April. So we got it all together and we figured out the webinar aspect of Zoom. We had done a few meetings, but nothing to the extent that we had 500 registrants within 48 hours, and just all the engagement and different aspects that we've learned from the registration process to the debriefs that we do at the end. We've really come leaps and bounds.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine. First, the idea of pivoting in a 48-hour window is a voluminous task in and of itself, let alone with 500 plus registrations and a guest of that caliber. So what did you do to ensure success both for the content from a content perspective, but also for a participant perspective? So what steps did you guys take? And obviously, with a lot of the folks we speak to, we are operating in a new world. There is no white paper to go and download for best practices. So what did you guys do to ensure success at that early stage in the game for your April event?
Yeah, I mean, with an opportunity like that, you just can't pass it up. So it was all hands on deck. Everybody on the team had a role in it, and we divided up the copy and the content, getting the marketing taken care of. And then between that, we had the production team that was running tests on the best functions and functionalities in the Zoom platform on the webinar side, and just really putting together a run of show agenda and making sure to get that tech check scheduled, because that's where we answer all the last minute questions. We review the agenda with the speakers, and we really get them to feel comfortable so that they're confident when they join us the day of. And yeah, I mean, I think that especially with our VIP speakers, and in the beginning, Zoom was the platform that they were most comfortable on as well. So I think that at the beginning is one of the biggest reasons that we chose to stick with our webinar format in the same platform as our meetings and smaller workshops. And it's been working really well for us ever since. So we haven't changed that up yet.
That's awesome. So 74 events in, I would imagine things also look a little bit different at this point. It sounds like you stayed with what you started with, but I would imagine things have evolved. We have listeners and viewers that have not necessarily gone 74 events deep on virtual. So if there were learnings that you might share with somebody that's thinking about how do they approach 2021 virtually or in hybrid format, is there a tip or two or three that come to mind of things that kind of you've learned the hard way by rolling up your sleeves?
Yeah, I would definitely say the biggest thing to keep in mind is, because there's somewhat of the Zoom fatigue at this point, just really keeping it like a TV show, however you can get creative in that respect. So we do like an intro and outro videos that we will play at the beginning and the ending of the webinars that are kind of like a commercial, but we're able to allow people that time to either log into the event, and then at the end, if we have surveys, if there's extra questions and things, people have a little bit more time to kind of stay in and network or ask any other questions that they might have in that way. So any way that you can be different in that engagement factor, contests that you can do on social media, has been a lot of fun, and we've been getting really creative with it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Engagement can mean so many different things to different people. It could be something along the lines of just involving the audience from a Q&A perspective, or creating that networking experience like you're talking about. And I think it's weighing what's right for each event. For your mission, and maybe we step back and just, can you share with our audience, what does the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, what is the mission for you guys? Because I think that those kinds of interactions really play a pivotal role in connecting your community. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a nonprofit, and our mission is to deliver world-class resources and mentoring to enable every entrepreneur across the globe to realize their maximum potential and grow. We serve entrepreneurs of every industry, background, every stage and size of their business. And we have about 51% female founders and around 64% minority founders in the community right now. So we've switched all of our internal programming digital, and we've really been able to expand not only within the nation, but globally quite immensely over this time, which has been really exciting and inspiring to see. But within the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, we have been working to roll out most recently the Institute for Equitable Entrepreneurship. And so that is research and resources that fuels agency and access for entrepreneurs across the globe. So one of our most recent initiatives is our Mentor Makers program, which is really exciting. We're offering free mentorship to entrepreneurs of, like I said, all backgrounds, all stages, all sizes, and you can go on somewhat like a matchmaking platform and connect with mentors of all of any need that you have for your business. And you can spend 30 minutes or you can spend an hour with them. And our goal is to accrue 1 million mentoring hours by the end of 2021. So that has been a huge part of my time recently. And we've been working to do live experiences every month, where we are doing different formats and testing out different ways to really keep the audience engaged. And for the launch we did in late October, we had about 8 different speakers that we did a summit, and they each had about 8 to 10 minutes to do a presentation. And it was really quick. It was really different than some of these fireside chats or networking events that we've been doing, but worked really wonderfully. Everybody had great reviews, and we had the privilege of inviting Wintley Phipps to join us and close out the event that day. And he's a world-renowned vocalist and one of Oprah's favorites. And yeah, he finished the event by doing a live song, and it just sounded so beautiful. And we had feedback from the audience saying, this is the best vocal performance I've seen yet on a Zoom event. So yeah, it's really about just making sure you've got the speakers' cell phone numbers if they need anything, if there's any tech issues, just being ready to troubleshoot those and get that tech scheduled, because that's been really helpful in terms of those last minute things.
Yeah, absolutely. So many questions come to mind too. First of all, I love the idea that you ended with a vocalist and with, you brought something different and engaging that we can all relate to in our own way through music. So I wasn't going to start here, but let me ask, how did you tackle production for that? Because when it comes to entertainment, especially with a vocalist, there's such a sensitivity to getting that right and having the sound at a certain level. So how did you guys handle that production aspect? If we can start there, if you don't mind my asking on that end of the equation.
Yeah, well, we did the tech checks, and like I said, with Wintley, it was with some of the VIPs, they just don't have as much time to spend. So I was fortunate enough to have a text message thread going with him. So if he needed anything, he would just ping me. But he basically was ready to go. I think that he's done this pretty often, and his voice was just so impactful and amazing that I don't think he could have gone wrong. So I think I kind of lucked out with the performer that we had. But really, any different way that you can keep people engaged is exciting in this time. And so with that tech check, it's going through your camera, making sure that things sound okay, the connection is working well, and giving yourself that time to adjust if you need to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had a lot of conversations with folks where, in a sense, the planning and the pre-production actually take more time in the virtual world because of all the tech checks and all of the orchestration, that it's a little bit easier in a traditional event. But of course, you have the upside in the virtual world of the audience, which, you sort of spoke to about the global audience that you're reaching now. How has that changed what you guys are doing in terms of your mission and going to the point of the goal for the 1 million hours of mentorship? How has had a global audience? How has that changed the dynamics from an event perspective of what you guys are thinking is possible? Because I would think in these times, entrepreneurship is more important than ever as people seek to find new solutions in this new world we're operating in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from an event perspective, I think the biggest thing that we've done differently is being much more aware of the time zones and the time frames that we're scheduling things. And I mean, some of our topics are very regional specific as well, like our PPP forgiveness events that we did with our sponsors, might not be as useful to other countries, but really just being aware of what time zones everybody else is in. And then the global reach has just continued to expand with the opportunity to be able to participate. So I think that's the biggest changes that we've seen there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being cognizant of time zones can certainly make a difference from an event production perspective. And as we reach global audiences now and have that opportunity, it does change how we have to think about production. I can definitely see that being something you guys are navigating. How have you found, do you find that a bigger event is better where you have a global audience and you can have more participants? Or are you better off, to your point about the regional events, crafting smaller events that are engaging on a different level? Is there a preference that you guys have identified yet that works better for your organization?
That's a very great question. And that's something that we are constantly working to find trend lines in and which is going to work better. And I think we've just seen that that's been different for every single event and every single month. That is something within the Mentor Makers program that we will be doing one networking event and one experience or more of a webinar style format to continue to be able to dive into which is working better. But I really feel like it's important to have both. I think there's definitely part of the community that we've seen that wants to be involved and they want to
Sure.
put videos on and they want to ask questions. And then there's a majority of our community that wants the education and wants to participate, but they're more comfortable in the webinar setting. And so it's really what works for your community and really that trial and error and just testing everything and finding out what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we love the trial and error. I mean, we think that this is such a unique disruption for event professionals and marketing pros, the convergence of the technology to really do a lot of trial and error and figure out what works. You mentioned earlier that the networking piece. So obviously this is important from a mentorship perspective and sort of an engagement perspective. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about how you guys have dealt with networking? Because I know there's a lot of different ways to actually navigate networking in the virtual space. And I think, again, we're all trying to figure out what is the best way to do that, if there is a singular best way. So what's worked for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, up until recently, we've done most of our networking in Zoom on the meeting side of things. But in Mentor Makers, we are actually doing our first event next Monday in Remo. And that has been a really fun, cool app that we can assign different table topics to different tables. You can all pay attention to the same presentation and we can grab the attention at the front, or we can break out into different sessions and people can move around from table to table. And we are very excited to see how that goes. So I can get back to you after next week. But
excellent.
Yeah, but the team that has worked in the remote platform before has said that it's been really a different experience than just being in another Zoom room. And it's been working really well for them. So we're excited to test that out. And then we did just a very casual, fun networking event in October around Halloween time. And we had a virtual photo booth that was really cool. Snapchat Studios are amazing. They could do little props and things, and you can do GIFs and videos, and it saves to a gallery that you can then feature out on socials. So we did a costume contest, and we featured all the winners on our Instagram stories. So that was kind of fun. And then, cool. We've done a lot of the workshops, and our flagship program for the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center is our Milestone Makers Accelerator. And we did 4 cohorts this year, which we typically do 2. So we've ramped that whole program up. And we did one in the summer that was specifically around companies that were helping the pandemic. So that's been really inspiring and impactful. And all of that was done in Zoom and Zoom meetings and breakout rooms. So back to the content and really designing that experience that people are going to remember and take with them. I think because we have a shorter amount of time, our events used to be 3 to 5 hours in person, whereas now they might be, an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 at the most. So really getting that content in there and really focusing on what that message is and who that message is being delivered to has been really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a lot of conversations about how do you translate, and your pivot to something shorter seems to make a lot of sense in our, shall we say, attention span challenge times. So I think going shorter makes sense. Now, you also mentioned something, this word that some may view as a dirty word, but I think it's important, sponsorship. There's so many new opportunities for sponsorship and to drive revenue. Have you guys explored those areas to this point?
Yeah, we've thought about it and we've talked about it, especially because our in-person facilities have the broadcasting cameras because we do the bell ceremonies for Nasdaq on the West Coast out of our physical venue space. But we haven't actually gone down that road in terms of sponsoring individual event webinars at this point. We have our topic a little bit different where we have our annual sponsors that that are involved in all of our programming and events, where we can plug them in. So we've really been working with them to create the content and create the panels and really pull them into the design factor. So that has been what we have done so far, but we've definitely looked into external pop-up sponsors, I'd like to call them.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that will definitely continue to be a trend in 2021.
Agreed. Well, so that's what I wanted to ask you before we let you go, because I want to be mindful of the clock here. Where you look into the crystal ball, we obviously hope that we get beyond the pandemic, and we hope that everyone's healthy in the new year. But where do you see virtual going? How do you see this unfolding and sort of interacting with traditional? What do you see unfolding in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be different in every city. Just in San Francisco, the way that they've been operating versus LA has been completely different, and in the same state. So I really think that's going to be dependent on all of the companies, and especially because some of these larger corporations are potentially going to be working from home permanently. But at the same time, if people aren't going into the office, then they're going to be needing more event space to have the meetings that they will need every once in a while. So I do see us going back to live or hybrid in the future. I don't know if that's going to be late summer of 2021 or the end of 2021. But I do think that hybrid will be, of course, the most or the next step that we'll see. And I do think that digital is definitely here to stay. So
yeah. Well, as somebody that was early on the hybrid function of kind of having the Facebook live streaming coupled with your traditional events, if we could leave us with what is a lesson learned that will change how you do hybrid in the future. So you did hybrid one way pre-pandemic, and now with this 74 events and counting experience, what do you bring to those future hybrid events that changes how you guys are producing those and planning those and executing?
Yeah, I would say that previously we had a standard camera kind of set up in the back. There wasn't any view changes. There wasn't any of the production factors. So I think adding the bottom thirds, whatever you can do to add a logo, change the views, I think that really keeps the audience's attention. So that's something that we'll be considering, and just the quality of the sound, the video, the experience is going to be really important, and it's on-demand or evergreen on-demand content. So that marketing aspect of it is really amazing and beneficial as well right now.
Absolutely. So many exciting changes, and we don't know where this is all headed. It's exciting times for you and for our audience to partake in this industry. Laurel, I so appreciate you joining us. I can't wait to hear about your next 74 events and your hybrid events and where things go in the future. We only wish you the best in the new year. And thank you for joining us here at the Institute of Virtual on our Lunch and Learn series. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Institute of Virtual Lunch and Learn series. Thanks for joining us for now. Check out our blog posts and our forums and all the resources available on our website. Best of luck in your next virtual event. We'll see you real soon. Take care.